Good evening, everyone. Author R. Weir, Randy. Hope everyone's having a great day. It's nice and warm here in Colorado for late February, our usual crazy weather. I'll be introducing my guests here in a few minutes, but I was going to talk about, I've got my new book coming out March 3rd, Justice for the Forgotten, new book, new series. Donnie Steele and his canine companion Kogel. So I'm looking forward to it. I've been getting some really good early reviews on it. Excited about this new book. It's a little different than my other two series. A little more spiritual and a little more emotional than some of the other series. And there's my logo for the new Steel Wheels Cold Mystery. It'll be book one. Hopefully there'll be a 2, 3, and 4. We'll see how that goes. But March 3rd, and it's still on sale for a great price for 99 cents. So be sure to download or get it ordered now so you can have it on your Kindle when you start reading on Monday. All right, so my guest tonight is going to be a guest of honor at the Left Coast Crime, Manuel Ramos. Hi, Manuel. How you doing?
Hi, Randy. I'm doing fine. How are you?
Yeah, going well. You're a Denver person. We were talking before the show. Have lived here all your life in Colorado. So I'm a transplant, but you've been here since day one.
Yeah, I don't get around much, I guess that's what that means. I was born down in the little town of Florence, Colorado, on the banks of the Arkansas River, near Canyon City.
Yes.
A lot of family in there.
Yeah, I've rafted on the Arkansas many moons ago, a long time ago. But yes, that's a beautiful area down there.
Yeah, it was nice. It was a great place to grow up. I'll tell you that. In fact, several of my stories come out of experiences that I had back in Florence, and that's where I actually started writing. We lived in Florence until I was a sophomore in high school. Then we moved to Colorado Springs. But the early years, I spent a lot of time in the Florence library, so I got plenty of ideas from that too.
Well, we'll have to find out about some of the books that have inspired you through the years and stuff. But so you started in Florence. You said you moved to Colorado Springs, and you said now you live in Denver, North Denver, I think.
That's
so you've
right.
kind of been migrating north. Does that mean you'll be heading to Loveland or Fort Collins here soon?
I don't think so. I think my wife and I have lived in this house now for 40 plus years on the north side. So I think that probably means we're not going anywhere else. And if we did, we got too much stuff in this house to move. So.
Yes, we had been in our house for 22 years, and we moved. It's been 5 years ago from Aurora. Thankfully, Aurora's gotten kind of become a battleground in Aurora, and we moved to Westminster. And yes, 22 years worth of stuff. We were doing lots of garage sales, and I was packing everything for months, getting ready to move. So I imagine 40 years worth of stuff be pretty tough.
Yeah, you don't even want to imagine it, Randy.
But your house is worth a lot more than when you bought it, I'm sure, 40 years later.
Well, that is true, yes.
It might be paid for, too. Huh?
Pardon?
Might be paid for now, too, huh? Okay, so tell us a little more about yourself. The important stuff people want to know. You're kind of, I was reading on your website and some of the stuff. People call you the godfather of Chicano noir, which is interesting.
Yeah, I've been called that, among other things. What I write is crime fiction. Okay, for the most part, I've written 11 novels, one collection of short stories, a couple dozen separately published short stories. And, it's all pretty much crime fiction, mystery, detective stuff. but there's always a little bit of my culture, something, my heritage, my background, stuff that I'm proud of, and that I like to keep in mind with my characters. Uh, and when I really got into it, I found that my stories had a certain darkness to them, and some of them were actually kind of bleak. And so I think then that's when the tag Chicano Noir started to have some relevance. And I liked it. I like that idea of writing something that can be classified that way. It may limit my audience, but it certainly also may open may open up to new audiences who are looking for something a little bit different. And I really appreciate the mystery genre in general. When I was a kid growing up in Florence and spending that time in the library, what I read a lot of was the golden age classics of mysteries. They even though I was a pretty young kid, the librarian there got to know me, and they let me read various things, including Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett and Patricia Highsmith, authors like that really influenced the mystery genre, the crime fiction genre. And so when I actually started to do my own writing a few years later, it just seemed natural that these stories were going to have that kind of edge, kind of mystery thing to it. And when I started working on my first novel, I realized after I'd gotten into about 50 pages or so that, yeah, I was writing a mystery. I hadn't set out with that goal in mind. I just wanted to write a story. And that's what it turned out to be, a mystery. So here we are.
So did you have any, besides just being a fan of that and enjoying that, did you have any background in the criminal mystery, the crime world, and police work or anything like that kind of helped influence it as well?
Well, I was a lawyer. Don't hold that against me right now, but I'm retired from law. But I spent most of my legal career as an attorney for legal services, for Colorado Legal Services, the legal aid program. And from that, I did get some background and some interesting characters developed in my head based a bit on people I'd been in contact with because of my lawyer work. And so, of course, being a lawyer too, I became familiar with the courtroom and how courtrooms work, and new judges and all kinds of other lawyers, of course. So that's probably the biggest influence. I can't really say that I had any relatives in strict law enforcement, but most of my friends and adult friends, did come out of the legal background in terms of being a lawyer, practicing law in the city of Denver or even the state of Colorado, actually.
Yeah, and it's that's very interesting. I know when I was working on one of my books, I had a judge who works at Adams County that helped me with one of my books, and he actually was my lawyer at one time as well. And he was giving me a lot of insights and everything, because he was telling me, a lot of the stuff now is streamed live, so you can watch a lot of the courtroom stuff in Colorado, a lot of it interesting. And you watch it, and after a while, you're kind of like, wow, this is definitely not anything like LA Law or any of those other TV shows or movies or The Lincoln Lawyer, right? So much more dramatic.
Yeah, there's a big difference, isn't there, between the actual and the fiction. And I've been retired now for several years, so the practice of law has really changed since I retired. And it just seems to get faster and more techy, and it's a different attitude, I think, from what I had to do when I was a lawyer. I had to walk 20 miles in snow to get to the courthouse. But that's a
Uphill,
joke.
right?
That's a yeah. But I enjoyed being the lawyer, especially the kind of law that I practiced, legal services. People who came to our office were always in a crisis, always in an emergency. And so it was rewarding work. It could be, it did have a burnout effect though on me in particular, but also on all kinds of other lawyers that I knew who do that kind of work. And so as a stress reliever during that time, I went back to writing fiction. I had been writing creatively in high school and then through college. And then all that stopped when I went to law school and became a lawyer for, about a dozen years because I was, focusing on the law career. But when I started to feel a little, stressed and maybe, the burnout thing was happening, I went back to fiction writing. And strange as it may seem, I wrote about a burned out, middle-aged Chicano attorney in Denver. And there we went to, that eventually became my first novel.
Well, there you go. And so that kind of was one of my later questions is, do you found writing therapeutic, or you found it stress relief for you? So obviously in your case, it really was.
Yeah, it was. And I appreciated it at that time. But since then, as I've done more of this, I realized that for me, at least, I'm not talking about anybody else, but for me, writing is hard work.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of focus and concentration, and I really get into it when I'm doing it. And nobody's forcing me to do it. Don't get me wrong. And I'm very happy that I became a writer, but there is this other side that, for me at least, it can be a little stressful in the sense of trying to move the characters to the next chapter, develop that plot, make sure I'm not repeating myself. Those kind. I'm sure you're familiar with those kinds of things that go on in a writer's head as we're working on our stuff.
Yeah, there's always that. I know when I start a new project, like I started this new series afterwards, and you start that writing process and you go, is this any good? You get a certain point through there, and you get maybe a third of the way through, and you go, is it any good? And I reach out to some of my alpha or beta readers and try to get their feedback and stuff. And then I also go back and reread it and go, okay, is this actually going the way I want or not? So yes, it can be that way, especially when you start a new project. Maybe when you're working maybe with more established characters that you've been writing, it's maybe a little easier, but
yeah, I think that's right for the well-established characters. As long as I realize that I don't want to repeat stuff that character did in other books, except the normal kinds of things, but there's something really specific to a book, and I don't want to try to set up the same situation in the next book. Got to be careful for that. But yeah, it's just one of those things. It's strange. Writing has really been. I've really enjoyed the writing and producing and creating, and I think that the two things that I've taught myself about what it takes to be a writer is I have to be a good reader, to be a good writer. So I read as much as I can, read everything I can, not just mystery or crime fiction. And the second thing is I've got to have confidence in my work. And so if those two things are in play within me, then I'll keep writing for as long as that lasts.
Yeah, that's great. So who are you were talking about some of the classics you like to read when you were younger. Are there any of the more modern authors that are out there, crime fiction authors, or even other type of authors that you enjoy reading now that you go, oh, he's got a new book out. I got to go get that one.
Well, in the non-mystery, non-crime fiction field, there's a writer named Alfredo Vea, VEA. He comes out of the Bay Area of California, and he's written only 4 novels. And I think the first one came out in 99, maybe. But I think his writing is just tremendous. You know, I think he's really an absolute brilliant guy. You know, somebody that when I have a conversation with him, it's hard to keep up. He you know, he just knows so much, and he's done a lot of stuff. From being a Vietnam veteran to a death penalty attorney, you know, all kinds of things have gone on in his life, and his 4 books are just beautiful works of art. And the first one was semi-autobiographical, called Que Milagro, you know, what a miracle. And so I always mention Alfredo when people ask me for recommendations for somebody to read. In the crime field, you know, there's so many writers today, and I pick up a book, and yeah, I usually enjoy it. You know, I just really get off on reading other people's work, and seeing how they're doing it and what they're doing, and I appreciate it. Somebody like Elmore Leonard, who's not current, of course, but I mean, I read Leonard mainly. Well, I mean, he's got some great stories and characters, but he's beautiful on dialogue, don't you think? He's just an amazing writer with capturing the way people talk and the way they express themselves. So, you know, he's good for that. I like writers like Mario Acevedo, local Denver writer. Do you know him by any chance?
I don't think I've ever met him.
He's got several novels out, and he's actually across the board. You know, he doesn't just do crime fiction. He's done other works, but Mario's got a great sense of humor. So, and I personally think humor is hard to write. You know, it's very difficult to write, especially if that's what you're trying to do. You know, is write a funny book. That would never work for me. But Mario's got a great sense of humor, so I appreciate that for him.
I'll have to look him up, see if he'd be interested in being on the show, because I always am looking for different authors and maybe not as well-known authors to be on the show. And he sounds like it, especially like you said, humor. I have a little bit of humor in my books, but it's kind of spread out. It's not a purely humorous book. I think you're right. I would find that very difficult to make an entire book that would be, you know, laugh out loud funny, you know.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I think Mario would want to be on your show for
yeah.
So
what was the first thing you wrote? Do you remember way back when you really started to think, I want to be a writer? What's that one? And it doesn't have to be really the first, but the one where you go, you know, I think I might be pretty good at this.
Well, I'll tell you, in high school, I had a teacher. Her name was Treva French, and she taught English, and she also taught creative writing. And I took the class because I had been playing around with writing little sketches, describing people, right? Describing my relatives. And I took the class to see what that was all about in terms of creative writing. And I wrote some short stories for Mrs. French. And she had a project with her class where we would put together a literary magazine during the quarter or the semester. And, you know, we all contributed something, and there was artwork by some of the art students there. And Mrs. French was really supportive and very much concerned about her students performing well in that journal. and she encouraged me tremendously. So I have to say that because your question was about who influenced me back then or something like that.
Yeah, it was that first work or the thing that you wrote
Right.
that maybe I can actually be pretty good at this.
Yeah. And it was a short story that I wrote for Mrs. French, and she liked it and put it in her journal, and we got some good comments about it. And so I said, yeah, I should do more of this stuff. And so I did. I started that at high school and continued through Colorado State University. And as I mentioned before, I kind of stopped after that when I went to law school, but I got back to it. And the very first thing I published was a story for it was either the first or second thing I published. It was a story for Westward magazine when Westward used to have a fiction contest back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I submitted a short story, and we got second place, and they published it. So that was also a stellar day in my career.
So do you still have a copy of that from high school, the one you wrote, that short story?
Unfortunately not.
No?
I don't have that high school story, no.
No. Huh?
No.
One of those, if you did, it was on paper and probably typed and
yeah,
maybe even handwritten. Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, and between moving to Fort Collins and then to Boulder and then down to Denver, who knows where it is, right?
Got lost in all those moves. So, okay. So tell us about your books. You've got the Montez series. Is that Luis? Luis. Okay.
Luis Montez.
Yes. So, and you had on that series, let's see, there's book one right there. So was that your first set of books that you wrote?
Right. These, the covers you're seeing now are brand new.
Right.
These were just published this one was published in 2024, but it originally was published in 1993 by St. Martin's Press. This is the novel that was a finalist for the Edgar Award, and it started the series of Luis Montez, the Chicano attorney in Denver. Okay. So what happened here was that these novels, St. Martin's Press published 4 novels of mine. Then the 5th one in the series was published eventually by the University of New Mexico Press. But I purchased the books back from, they had been reprinted one time by Northwestern University Press. I bought those back from Northwestern, and my current publisher wanted to reprint them and make new issues and give them, jazzier covers. So that's the project I've been working on now for the past couple of years, is getting these reprinted. And we've done 4 of them so far, and we have one more to go, which should come out later this year in 2025. And so that entire series will now have been reprinted. And then we'll see if we start with the second series, my second character, Gus Corral.
So you said he's a lawyer,
right?
So is this character you?
No. Let's not go there.
Or maybe based on someone you knew?
Well, many of my characters have bits and pieces of real people, right? I mean, it's bound to happen. I think, I live in the real world, and whatever I come across in terms of interaction with other people, it probably sticks in my head somewhere. And if my imagination is working, I'm going to pull it out and use it in a story somehow. Yeah. But Luis certainly is not me. I mean, we share certain characteristics, but I never found a dead body in my office like Luis has. So,
well, that's
key differences.
like we said, right? Real life lawyers and and fiction lawyers are a little more dramatic than what
Right.
you deal with every day. So, what was that first book? What was the little gist of what the storyline was?
Well, Luis is an attorney who's been in practice now for 20 years at the beginning of the book. And he's starting to doubt that he's starting to believe that he might have wasted his life doing what he's been doing.
Mm-hmm.
He's barely making it as an attorney. When he was in college, he was a student activist. He was a political person. He challenged the status quo. He took on issues, and he led a very eventful life when he was a young man in college. And it was during that time that his best friend, Rocky Ruiz, was killed, murdered. And there never was an adequate explanation as to what happened with Rocky. So when Luis is pondering, what he's done with his own life, he starts to think about Rocky. And it becomes apparent to him that if he wants to get any peace at this stage of his life, he has to resolve the murder of Rocky Ruiz. And so, it begins an investigation, and he goes to his old friends. And then meanwhile, a young woman, a young lawyer shows up in town, and she starts asking some questions of Louis' friends. And so Louis has to figure out what connection she has to all of this. So there's that part of the plot too. But the book rolls along, and eventually there's a resolution of the mystery, of course. And that book was so well received that I got a contract to continue the series, and I became a writer.
So he kind of turns detective then a little bit as he's a lawyer, but he's investigating a crime.
Yes, exactly. Right. He's an amateur investigator, a professional litigator, but amateur investigator.
So this was book 2.
Yeah, The Ballad of Gato Guerrero.
Accordion there looks like, huh?
Yes, right. Good eye.
Yes.
The accordion is there because some of the plot takes place at a music festival in New Mexico. And Gato Guerrero is a good friend of Luis Montes. And unfortunately, Gato is on the run from some not very nice people that he's offended. And so Louis is kind of thrown in the middle of that. And he has to help his friend Gato. And meanwhile, he's also dealing with a young man in Denver who's become involved with gangs. And Louis is trying to help the kid out, even if the kid doesn't want the help. And again, there's a love interest for Louis that doesn't really go anywhere.
We can't have our characters be too happy, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Part of that darkness. I noticed there on the first 2 covers, he's got that cigarette. He's got the fedora. So very kind of classic private eye detective type lawyer, 50s, 60s, those type of that feeling that you see from those. It sounds like these books kind of have that tone.
Yeah, that's right, Randy. And you can see the mountains in the background so people will realize we're talking about the Mile High City in Colorado. So that series continued for 3 more books. And then by the time I had written the last one, Brown on Brown, I thought I had said all I could say about Louis. Those 5 books took up about 10 years of his life. Mm-hmm. And I was fairly convinced that there wasn't too much more that was going to happen to Louis. But of course, when I started my new series, he pops up in each of the books, I think he has a greater role in the one called My Bad, and then in the others, it's a much less of a role, but he's still there in the books.
Yeah. So this is the first book, right, of the new series.
Right.
The newer series, the one afterwards. So who's the main character in this one?
This is a guy named Gus Corral. And Gus was born into the north side of Denver and has watched the tremendous changes that have taken place in the neighborhood with gentrification and, Denver moving from a cow town to more of a cosmopolitan metro area. And Gus is trying to figure out how he's going to maintain, how he's going to survive all the changes happening around him, which he doesn't really like the changes, but on the other hand, not much he can do about it. And eventually he has to come to grips with what's been going on and how his reaction to the changes have affected him in other ways, with other people. So Desperado is he gets in serious trouble at the beginning of the book, and the rest of the book is spent with how he manages to get out of that trouble and still maintain some legitimacy on the streets. Because even though the neighborhood may be changing, some of the people in the neighborhood still remember what Gus was like before he got involved with trying to fix things up that are happening around him.
And I read it. He's an ex-con too, right? So he spent time in jail.
He does spend time in jail.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this book, that hasn't happened yet, but eventually, yeah.
Eventually, as the series goes on.
Yeah.
So the last book, or the latest, this is your latest book, right?
Yes, that's it.
In the Wind. Yeah.
Right.
So give us a little bit about it's Gus again, right?
Gus again. And by now, Gus has become a professional private eye. Okay. He's decided that that's the way he's going to, make a living. And he's been taking on various kinds of cases, but pretty much it's humdrum PI stuff, serving papers and taking witness statements, photographs, nothing glamorous or very dramatic. But in Angels in the Wind, he gets called on by a relative who lives in eastern Colorado, not in the city anymore, but out of the plains of eastern Colorado, a place that Gus is not very familiar with. His entire life has been spent pretty much inside the parameters of Denver. The relative, his cousin, has a teenage son who has periodically run away and would leave the home for a few days, maybe a week, but then eventually come back. And the young man who does that obviously has a lot of things going on in his life that he's reacting that way. And the relative calls Gus to ask if he can help, because this last time that the boy ran away, and he's about 17 years old, the last time that he ran away was a month ago, and he hasn't shown up. And usually, like I said before, it's only been a couple of days or at the most a week that the boy is gone, but now it's been a whole month. And so the family would like Gus to look into it and try to find the boy and bring him home. So Gus leaves the city and goes out to the plains and experiences that lifestyle and uncovers a few other mysteries while he's looking for his cousin's son. And eventually he finds out what happened and who's responsible. And that's where we are now. What's next for Gus?
Yeah. So is there going to be, that was book 4, right? So do you have a 5th book in the works?
I do.
Yeah.
And actually I'm very close to finishing it, and I will submit it. I'm pretty sure within the next month to my publisher, Arte Publico Press, and hopefully they will accept it and put it in their lineup, and we can get it out there. Nothing's guaranteed, but they're very friendly towards me and very cooperative, and I have a very good relationship with that press. It's a university press. It comes out of the University of Houston. So there are the things about a small press that I deal with, and but overall, I really appreciate Arte Publico Press and what they do with my books. They are the largest publisher of Latino related literature in the world, I believe. I mean, I think they say in the United States, but there isn't another publisher anywhere. Even in Spain, you have Spanish publishers, and in Mexico, you have Mexican publishers, and so on, through Latin America. But publishers for Latino literature, people like me who grew up in the United States or live in the United States and are writing about that experience, Arte Publico is the largest publisher of that kind of literature. And they do a lot of crime fiction, actually. So,
well, that's good. Have you found that the more traditional publishing houses are a little like, no, that won't sell? They kind of have their, they like their crime fiction, but they kind of they have a little formula. I mean, do you think that works against you somewhat there?
I to an extent, yeah. I encountered a lot of that when I was first trying to get started, and these days it's better, okay. And there are many more Latino writers, Chicano or otherwise, getting published and new stuff coming out every year. But still, it's a very hard road, and there are more, but there really aren't the numbers that there should be, in my view. So it's still a struggle. That's why I am grateful to Arte Publico Press for existing, and doing what they can to help correct that situation. And I try to keep abreast of what all these other writers are doing, and it's all over the board. I mean, you will find Latino writers, Latina writers doing cozies and cat mysteries and food mysteries, as well as noir like me, or straightforward private eye, or police procedurals. So we are in all these other areas of mystery writing and crime fiction, but again, like I say, the numbers still aren't right.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be true. So what is your writing process? Do you consider yourself a pantser, or are you a plotter?
Well, I've always said that I'm a pantser, that I do write by the seat of my pants, in the sense that what I start with is a character and maybe a vague idea of what the conflict might be, and then get into it and start and keep writing. And I surprise myself, I've written books where the ending was totally not what I thought it would be, and the bad guy isn't who I thought it would be. So I that's part of the writing process. But in this most recent book, that I'm just finishing now, I found myself, before I put all that down, I was thinking more about it. I was trying to figure out a way of presenting it without too much change later, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So in that sense, I kind of turned into a plotter, but it wasn't the full plot. It would be like the next step would be something that I would write it down and think about it instead of just getting into it and writing it. I think it worked this time, and I'm not sure that that's the way I want to keep doing stuff, but I don't know.
Well, and a true plotter usually plots the whole book out. I mean, I've interviewed a few pages and pages of plotting, and then they start writing. And then, a true pantster, you start, well, like you said, you start with a basic idea, you've got a basic character, and then it just kind of goes. And I'm a pantster all the way. So, I feel like the characters are with me while I'm writing a lot of times. They're kind of hovering around me, and some of them are going, I want a bigger part, things like that in the story, and stuff like that, which, that may go to where my head is a lot of times when I'm writing. But yeah, so you sound like you're really more of a true pantster, and maybe you did a little bit in this last book.
Yeah.
Did you feel like it made it easier for you to do that? Well, maybe the storyline was very complicated and you felt like you had to do a little bit more of that in advance?
That must have been it, I guess. It did seem a little complicated at times, but I hopefully have cleared that up.
And got the story done. So
Right.
So you've done some anthologies and some short stories as well. I didn't get any of those covers, but and I think you've had a few nominations for some of those as well. I know you said the one you put in Westworld years and years ago.
Right. Well, I was in Denver Noir.
Mm-hmm.
You come across that book, that collection?
I have not come across that one, but I will have to look it up.
Yeah, Akashic Books out of Brooklyn has for years done a series of noir short story collections based on a particular city. So they have, I think, close to 200 of these books, and they're Los Angeles noir and Cleveland noir, London noir, noir all over the world. And what they do is they get an editor from the city that's going to be the next one, who then picks about a dozen writers from the area. And then each one of those writers writes a short noir story about a particular neighborhood in the city. So in Denver Noir, Cynthia Swanson was the editor, and we each got a separate area of the city. So of course I took the north side, and I wrote my short story based on the north side. But there are, like I said, there are really a lot of those books, and they're very successful, and they sell a lot. So my short story is in there. One of my short stories is in there called Northside Nocturne that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
And that came out, what, a year and a half ago, maybe, something like that.
Oh, really? So it's been pretty recent then.
Yeah, it's fairly recent. Then and it won the Colorado Book Award the last time around. So there's I've done a short story for a linked short story collection, where the stories are linked in some way, so that, like, you could almost say it's a novel, but written by 9 or 10 separate authors, and each of the authors takes a separate story and links it to the others. I participated in one called culprits. And what that was about is a gang of thieves rips off a very wealthy Texan, and then they all separate after the heist. And the collection is a short story about the members of the gang and what happens to them after the heist. So, I was given a character, and then I had to write what happened to her after the particular heist of the rich Texan. And that was enjoyable. And that book actually got picked up by, I think it was Paramount.
Disney Plus.
Who?
Disney Plus.
Disney. It was Disney. Yeah, my wife's reminding me here. They bought the book, the collection, and then eventually turned it into a series that was filmed in England and had no connection at all to the stories that we had written originally in Culprits, but they kept the name, gave us our money, and then did what they wanted with it. So that was okay.
As long as they paid you for it, right?
They did pay us.
Did you get at least a writing credit or any kind of producer credit or anything?
No, not in that one. Not in that one. Recently, my books have been optioned by Warner Brothers, and
yes, I read that on your website. And how's that going?
Well, it's going to be a long wait. I mean, who knows what they're going to do? They've got the option. They bought the option, so they have a year to try to figure out what they want to do with it, and then they can they can extend the option another year. And the way these things go, it could easily take years before anything comes of it.
Yeah, that's everybody that I've ever talked to that's happened to. It's a long ways. And I said, well, do they keep paying you each time they pick up the option? At least you get something for it, hopefully.
Yeah.
And then hopefully they don't change the characters' names. That's the other thing a lot of times they do. They don't seem to like the character names, so they'll change that.
Yeah,
or change the race or the sex of the character. That's the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, who knows where they'll end up. Yeah. But I was told that I could be consultant if any kind of production ever happens. So,
well, that's good.
Who knows again what that means? But I will consult.
Well, good. Well, hold your guns there, and make the characters what you want them to be. Hopefully, that's the one thing that they look at it. They do market studies and all that. So, well, a Chicano character wouldn't play that well, but you get all these series that are on Amazon and Netflix now, and I think they're at least they follow form at least a little bit closer. Michael Connelly's his new third series is a Hispanic female private or detective that's solving cold cases. And I'm blanking on her name off the top of my head. But I guess when you're Michael Connelly, sometimes you have a little more power, but I'm sure someone probably talked to him and he goes, well, can we change her and make her white or something else? And hopefully, they're like, nope, not going to happen. So.
Well, I hope so. Yeah. I think Conley's a great writer. So.
Well, he's done a lot of obviously very successful stuff. So we talked about some of the awards that you've been up for and you've won. You're also in the Colorado Authors Hall of Fame, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. That must have been really nice to.
Oh, it was very nice. It's totally out of out of the clear blue, as they say. I had no indication that was happening.
Yeah.
But that happened a couple of years ago. It was very nice. And I still maintain a relationship, of course, with all those people who are involved in that. They have scholarships and writing programs and things like that I try to support. But that was a fun night, when they presented everybody with whatever it is, in terms of you're now in the Hall of Fame. A nice banquet and entertainment. Had a bunch of my friends over there at the banquet. So, yeah, good time.
They have a little bust of you or anything there, or a wax figure or anything?
Should do a plaque like the Baseball Hall of Fame.
That's right. Yes. So is there a book that you want to write that you haven't written yet that's kind of burning a hole in your brain? Anything?
Well, I had a desire to write a book about Luis Montez's father.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way I understand Luis' history, his father came to Colorado back in the late 20s, early 30s, at a time when the politics in the state were very right wing, very conservative.
Sure.
And I've always wondered what Louis' father encountered when he came to this state, and how he survived and what he had to do to survive. And so I always thought there was a germ of a story there.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't written it yet, though.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah, go a little period piece going back in time. That would be interesting story. And so you've got. So I always ask, the name of the show is Bringing Life to Characters. So what when you're developing a new character, what is it you're trying to do to get that character to jump off the page, and people look at it and go, that's a real flesh and blood type of character, right? How do you work with that?
I have to believe in the character, in the sense that when I start writing about that character, the character talks to me in a way that is different from the other characters that I've written, if that makes sense. It's got to be something unique to really explore. And it could just be development of a previous character, a trait that didn't exist before. But I want to have something different presented that I want to enjoy and learn from myself. So that's one thing, is making sure that the character sounds unique in my head. When I'm writing about a particular character, the dialogue, I have to be confident again, in the sense that if I wanted to, I could tell the whole story just by the dialogue. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Just laying it out in dialogue so that the whole story gets told that way. If I feel that I can do that, then I'm pretty comfortable with the character and I can develop it. I wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't think I could really pull that off, but I've got to have enough faith in what I'm thinking about that seems like something that might happen.
Sure. Well, and I know when I write, if I've got I can sometimes write a long stretch of dialogue, just bang, 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 bang. And then I may break it up later. But once you get on that roll, and like you said, dialogue can be very difficult. You want it to sound natural, but that can be challenging sometimes. Talking, because in effect, you're talking to yourself back and forth, right, between the two characters, or three, or however many is in the scenes. But I will write a lot of that all in one big string, and then I'll go back later and break it up and have some motion and things like that in there too. I'm sure that's kind of what you're meaning there with that.
Yeah, I've done exactly that. A page or two of just dialogue, and then break it up.
So do you have any advice to aspiring authors? Be a
Well, let's
lawyer
see.
first, right?
Get a lawyer first, right? Get burned out, midlife crisis. Well, it's trite, but if you want to be a good writer, you got to be a good reader. I mentioned that before, and I truly believe that. You've got to read. And you've got to read eventually like a writer. You've got to be able to. I think you got to go through a book and see what the writer is trying to do and how he or she did it. And when you read books that way, it's a different experience. But I think it's very helpful to do that and to try to figure out what other people are doing with writing. The other thing the other piece of advice that has come in handy for short stories is to show up late and leave early. And if you can follow that rule, I think your short story will be pretty good.
That's interesting. Yes. So you've got the Left Coast Crime you're going to be doing here, which is just a couple weeks away.
Right.
And you're going to get to be interviewed on stage in front of a bunch of people. Yeah, you're looking forward to that, right?
Yeah.
And you'll be on some panels, I'm assuming.
Right. Yeah.
Panels are always fun.
Right. I'll be moderating one panel that we've called What Drove You to Murder? And so it's going to be the 4 or 5 writers explaining why they want to write about murder, what all it means to try to take that on. And then I'll also be interviewed by David Wombley.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with him?
I'm not, but
Okay.
yes, I saw that on the schedule. That
Right.
And yeah, I don't know about your panel. The panel I'm on, they didn't really give us a whole lot of guidance. They just said crime in Colorado. That was it. So we've been going back and forth, and I've said, well, I guess it's why Colorado is a good place to write about crime. Why did you choose Colorado? Obviously, we live in Colorado, so write what you know and all those things. But yeah, they didn't really give us a lot of guidance, so we'll probably be winging it a little bit on ours. So looking forward to the event. Well, hopefully I get the chance to run into you there. We're actually going to go ahead and stay at the hotel, so I don't have to drive back and forth. So you're probably a little closer than I am, so to downtown. So
yeah, but I think we're going to be at the hotel too. We'll see.
Just makes it easier a lot of times too.
Right.
When you're doing events. So let's see here. And then how do people get a hold of you and find your books and stuff? There's your website. Is that usually the best place for people to?
Yeah, I think that's the best place. We're in the process actually of updating the website, and it's just about done. And connections to all my books are there, and how to connect with me. If people have questions or something, they can find that kind of information on that website.
Yeah, but that's how I got a hold of you, was through the website, and you responded fairly quickly and stuff. And do you do a lot of social media in any way, or are you pretty much just try to stay away from the craziness there?
Yeah, I don't do a lot of that, Randy. I'm on Facebook, but a lot of what I put on Facebook actually doesn't have anything to do with writing. So
yeah. The true aspect of what Facebook was supposed to be about, right? Connecting with people that you've known through the years that you haven't seen. And of course, Facebook has gone way off the rails, way off what that is anymore.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, great. Well, we're about an hour here. Was there anything else that you wanted to bring up or talk about?
No, I think we've covered it, Randy. I really appreciate the time you've taken to talk with me and, setting this thing up. And
yeah, well, I appreciate you being on the show. It's great talking to you too. Hopefully I'll get a chance we can chat a little bit, hopefully maybe at Left Coast if we run into each other. I don't know. I know when I was at BoucherCon last year, that was such a crazy place, and there's just people all over the place, and we're walking all over. I don't think the Westin is going to be quite as spread out as the Gaylord was out in Nashville last year, but hopefully it won't be too bad. But I'm looking forward to hopefully get to see you, and I'll be in the audience listening to your interview, and I could whisper to people. I say, I knew he was going to say that. I already asked him that question, right?
Yeah. I may be repeating myself. You're right.
That's okay. That's okay. There are people in the audience that haven't seen my show, so I'll have to hand out to people and tell them, if you want to learn more about him, you can watch my interview with him as well. So, well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you being on tonight, and we will see you here in a few weeks at the Westin downtown.
You bet.
Hopefully the weather isn't too bad.
Yeah.
Something like this would be fine with me.
No blizzards, right?
No blizzards, please. No. And March in Colorado.
Right. Could be.
Yeah, there could be. So, all right.
Thank you, Randy.
Yep. Thank you. Yep. You take care too.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you being on tonight, listening. And next week, we'll have Sarah Paretsky on. She was the other. We have a blackout there. She's the other guest of honor, the VI Washorski. I'm going to mess that up every time I say it. And we're going to do that one in the morning because she's in Chicago, which will be fun to talk with her. And she's kind of a real trendsetter when it comes to books. And then after that, I forgot who else we're having, but we'll talk about that. And then I may be changing streaming services because StreamYard has jacked the prices up by twice as much. So I may go to another, but I'm still looking for services that are going to go to YouTube and Facebook, just like this one is. This one does, StreamYard does. And there's a couple of options out there that are look to be just as good and won't cost me an arm and a leg, so I can continue to do the shows. We'll be on StreamYard till the end of March because that's when the contract's up, so we'll look at something else. So, but thank you everyone for being on, listening tonight. You all have a great evening, and we'll see you next week. I think next week's is also on Thursday, but it's at 10 a.m. See, I'm sitting here not prepared tonight. Let's see here. March. Yes, it is the 6th. It'll be at 10 a.m. Thanks, everyone. Good night.